Popping smoke. Contact fire! Moving! Move! Moving! Move! Hey, what's up, shipmate? Bro, do you ever feel like we're the fucking turkeys in the turkey shoot?
Jesus Christ, it's like a fucking turkey shoot.
Fuck it. Hey, Mike!
What?
Hey, you know the brown backpack?
Yeah, what about it?
Mike, you know I really like that backpack.
Yeah, we'll get you another one.
Mike!
What?
I left all the water in the backpack!
You fucking idiot!
I ain't saying she a gold digger, she got names. Hey, Mike!
Yeah?
You still dating Amy?
Yeah?
Hey, bro, I got some bad news.
Yeah?
You guys say Amy's a gold digger.
Or I'm a gold digger.
What's up, buddy? Got 4 of them back there, huh?
Hey, you think we got enough time to get out the camera and film this?
I didn't bring a camera, but for what?
Bro, MySpace. The chicks back home will dig this.
Oh, bro, there's this new thing out. It's called Facebook. You can put it on Facebook, and all the Cali girls will love us.
21-year-old Mark Zuckerberg turned his little web experiment into a very big business. It's called thefacebook.com.
Fuck Facebook!
Bro, this guy Mark Zuckerberg, I've never even heard of him. Whoa! Oh, shit! This guy Mark Zuckerberg, that idiot right there, he shouldn't have even. This guy Mark Zuckerberg, he was like, he went to sell Facebook to MySpace for $75 million, and MySpace turned it down.
Man, fuck Facebook. Facebook ain't going shit nowhere. It's MySpace.
I don't know, we'll see.
Holy shit, Batman. Man, it's getting hot out here.
What in the fuck are you doing?
Bro, it's $120 out here. There's no fucking officer within miles.
Bro, you are so fucking lucky. You're so lucky I don't have a camera, because this would go on MySpace right now.
I like to move it, move it.
I like to move it, move it.
I like to move it, move it.
I like to move it.
Bro, you're watching way too many of your kids' movies.
Sorry, man. Oh, hey, guys, what's up? I missed y'all. Hey, listen, you know, in the words of Michael Jones and Aaron, what's his last name? I don't know. It would be marginal at best. The gun that lives rent-free in my head is the CQBR, or the Mark 18 Mod 0 or Block 1. I don't know what they call it, but this is it right here. All through the global war on terror, this was the gun. Whew, I was like, one day. Well, gentlemen, today is the day. Originally, it started with just the upper, and that was the CQBR upper. So that was it. You were getting the upper receiver. And they wanted as short of a barrel as they possibly could, so they went to the 10.3. Now, Mike, why did they go 10.3?
So they started with, you know, M4 uppers, right? So an M16 lower and an M4 upper, and they said, Crane, make this as short as we can make it. And they started basically cutting back until they could fit a suppressor on there, because the requirement was fit a suppressor on the shortest thing I can make it work. Well, the front sight, we weren't going to move the front sight post, and there's already a grenade cut on an M4 profile barrel that kind of lends itself real well. Like if you put it in front of that, it would be kind of weird, like the barrel profile wouldn't work right. So that is about where they started and said, okay, cool, we still need to be able to fit the suppressor on there and not have it hit the bayonet. Like, not that you can put a bayonet on it, but they didn't want to modify that front sight because they were using these Army SOCOM issue M4 uppers to make this modification. So that's how we got to 10.3.
And so there you have it. It started out as just the CQBR upper receiver. And then when they started putting the entire rifle together, and it started out on the M16A1, because the Navy had a bunch of M16A1s they were going to repurpose. So they naturally went to the Mark 12 program and the Mark 18 program. Now remember, at that time, it wasn't a Mark 18 Block 0. It was just a Mark 18 until the new one came out, and then they had to block it up, right? So this was the Mark 18. It just started as a receiver. And then Crane started sending the whole gun, and eventually Colt started sending the whole gun. And sometimes you would see them with an M4A1 government property mark. Sometimes you would, what all receivers did you see on that?
Oh, the M16A1s, the M4s. I mean, really, once it got to the arms room, it was whatever lower, because like you said, they were coming with different uppers, or you were only getting the upper. So it was whatever lower you had. Put it in there. I mean, one of my first rifles said Armalite on it. People were like, no, it didn't. I'm like, yes, it did. It said Armalite on it. It's the weirdest thing ever. So
it started out primarily as a Navy thing, hence Crane. Now Crane does things for both sides of they do it for Army, they do it for everybody. So Crane is not just a Navy thing, although it is Navy, right? But the Mark 18 then went on to have an unbelievable history and put its mark on the global war on terror. It is a pretty incredible weapon system. I have a bunch of former Navy SEALs that all were like the early 2000s when these were really coming online, it kind of in this configuration, that they absolutely love them still today. I mean, they were saying that they were making lethal hits out to 600 meters with them. This is a formidable fighting weapon that I don't know anybody who doesn't love it. Do you?
no, placed my heart in my first one, so I love it. I will have it.
Okay, so to the cloners, I want you guys to understand something, because I kind of got this clone bug in me that my buddy from the War Club had. Like, I met him and he's like, hey, I did this clone. I'm like, what does this even mean? And so I started really looking into these rifles, and then I read this thing online, and I think it was on clone rifles. I think it was really cool. They said, you're always gonna spend money, but clones will forever hold their value. I really think that's true. That's why I like these guns so much, because 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, somebody's still going to talk about the global war on terror, like we talked about Vietnam, like we talked about World War II. And to be able to hand this down to a grandkid somewhere, and maybe by that time another grandkid, and they've got a correct 2-spec actual Mark 18, and be like, hey man, by that time maybe they got laser phaser, lightsabers, I don't know. But it'll be really cool that they have this as a global war on terror piece of history. So I think whenever you're getting into a weapon system like this, a clone that you do all of the work on to get it as close to clone correct as you can, that it's forever going to be worth whatever you put into it, and probably more. All right, so the upper receiver, my upper receiver on this one is actually a Colt Anchor Forge M4 cage code one, and then it has the correct profile of the SOCOM barrel. Mike, explain to us the difference in the barrels.
So they come in like two profiles, right? There's normal government profile. That's what you'll find on most M4s out there. Just normal Army M4s. You can jump to the SOCOM side. They have a SOCOM profile, and it's real thick underneath the handguard there behind the gas block. It's almost like an inch in diameter. I don't know exactly how deep, but it's about an inch in diameter. And so my very first one was a SOCOM profile. And you could tell because you look inside and be like, oh, it's real thick. And that was, due to I wanted increased accuracy, I wanted a higher rate of fire because the other one heats up too much, or blah, 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 blah. Like, pick one reason why they did it, but the SOCOM one was thicker. So those are the two barrels that I saw, regardless of, they all had the front sight posts, they're all cut to the same length. And they were all cut down barrels of what we had. So we would buy an M4 upper, we send it to Crane, they cut it, they make some other internal modifications, especially the bolt carrier group and possibly charging handle, and then it would come back to us.
All right, talk about the bolt carrier group. What bolt carrier group did you get them back with from Crane?
So most of every bolt carrier group I ever saw was a Colt bolt carrier group, but at the time, frankly, you're not like looking, oh, is this way? It's just a bolt carrier group. You just flat phone it. Now the modifications were the McFarlane gas ring system, but again, you might have had that, and then we all cleaned our guns in the pit of, you're using a big degreasing thing or whatever you're doing, and you grab somebody else's bolt carrier group by mistake, and you threw it in there, and it had the standard, M4 individual 3 gas rings. So we always learned, okay, make sure the gas ring, the little slots don't line up so you don't get gas leakage. But they went to the McFarlane because it was a little bit more reliable because you don't have that issue. So that's the major change in the bolt carrier group.
If you are cloning and you go to like Little Bird Procurement, or you go to Tax Swap and you reach in and you grab, a Colt bolt from back then, you might need that little gas ring system. What is it, the McFarlane?
McFarlane gas.
You can still buy that and still put that on there. So I'm sure somebody on YouTube has a video on it. That's something that you're gonna wanna do to make this gun even more reliable. All right, so the rail is a Knights Armament rail. I actually think this one is marked Vero Beach. So I will say, guys, that part doesn't matter to me because it's like with, the Block 2s, when you're like, hey, it's Daniel Defense is supposed to say Savannah, Georgia, and not Black Creek. Well, all of the ones that I've seen are Black Creek. I've never seen a Savannah. I've never seen a Vero Beach. It's the, what is the other one? I can't remember, but I got a Vero Beach because it came with this as a package, but like the machines are the same and the laser engraving is different. Like that doesn't.
They're all built to a spec, so it doesn't matter. It was a Knights rail.
Now talk about the rail system just a little bit, because it was interesting to me as to why you see how they placed lasers. We'll talk about that in a minute, but why would you see guys change the configuration of these lasers so much?
All right, so when it comes to like mounting things on this quad rail, this is like the first quad rail that the military really saw. Like nowadays you get M4s with quad rails on there all the time, standard issue Army, but this was like the first time we had quad rails. And so this rail actually doesn't free float the barrel. It still attaches to the front sight post. And so when you mount things to it, it doesn't necessarily maintain zero. So like nowadays you're like, oh, I mounted my laser, and you torque it on, you zero it, and then you never want to take it off. Here we ended up having to double check it all the time anyway. So if you were doing something where you're like, I don't think I'm going to use this, you just unscrewed it and put it away because you didn't want to carry the weight, you didn't want to bump it around, you didn't want to break it. Things were robust, but they weren't as robust as they are now. And you can see what's going on in the front of this gun. That's a lot of stuff. And so that's why you would see guys move things around, because every mission they could have moved it around. Like I ran my PEC on top. That's just what I did because I could hit the button. And my light, I had a pressure switch and I could turn my light off. And that was it. I didn't necessarily need the PEC 5 for a day laser.
So they actually got issued with a couple of different rear sights. This one is a Lewis Machine and Tool sight, and some more history on it. Carl Lewis did a lot of work with SOCOM to develop this barrel, and so I would kind of consider him kind of the godfather of the Mark 18. He developed the barrel, started making them, and then Colt sole sourced the gun, and so they took the barrel over and took it away from Lewis Machine and Tool. Mike, could you explain to us what sole source means?
So typically what happens with a sole source is the government awards a sole source contract to a manufacturer or a supplier saying, we are only going to buy from you for this. So Colt, had it for the M16, the M4, it had it for, and the functional parts of that. So LMT builds a barrel. Basically what they're doing is they're building it, and then it has to get turned over to Colt for mass production because they're the ones that are supplying to the government. And some of that has to do with when they give these sole sources, like their ability to produce. Maybe it was a patent thing, maybe it was a copyright thing. It could have been lots of different reasons. Sometimes you just do sole source because that's what you want, and you don't want to have to constantly be competing. If that would have went back to open competition, now FN could have built the barrels, Colt could have built the barrels, LMT could have built the barrels. Like anybody else could have been like, hey, we're in the middle of a global war on terror. Like, no, just spin them up, do it this way, get it done.
The LMT sights, this is a really good sight. I really like the option of having the sights and the front post. We'll get into that in a minute, but what are some other sights? Because I know cloners especially are like, we have to have the exact sight, but we were talking about sights. You had some other ones too. What were they?
So I had a flip up arms and I had a Wilson Combat of all things. Like I got issued a Wilson Combat. We pulled them out. We're like, oh, this one's a little different. And it came down to like, that's a standard A2 sight. So there's windage and elevation on the back end, which is really cool. It's very accurate when you have to make those adjustments when you want to zero it. My Wilson had the exact same thing. It was a little bit easier with low profile and fold down. My arms didn't. It had windage. There was no elevation. So you had to zero with your front sight post, which is typical for your battle zero. But I had no other elevation changes with that. But it was nice and low profile and small. And for what I was doing with this gun, I didn't need elevation. What I didn't want was all the stuff back here because I wanted to try to use my optics. So I like the arms myself, and I got issued all 3 of them. I still have my LMT for.
Again, this just goes back to saying, hey, when you're doing a clone rifle on a Mark 18 Block 0, I would say if it was kind of in the SOP mod kit, you can put it on here and it's fine. So this is the sight that I have on here now is the Aimpoint Comp M2 for MOA. This was like standard, the M68, like it was standard, everybody had them. You could have, it came like normally when you think of it, it came with the Wilcox mount. This is an arms mount. What other mounts did you see?
Oh, I have a LaRue. That's on mine, as done. Still got the paint pen and everything else on it. I had a LaRue mount. I had a LaRue mount on my Trijicons. I had a LaRue mounts on almost everything. But yeah, the exact same optic, just different mounts. Because I think it's worth noting, we were pumping out so many different weapon systems and accessories that one company couldn't hardly make up or couldn't make them fast enough. And we wanted them, like we needed them now.
You know, come the early 2000s when 9/11 had just happened and the global war on terror just starts, we hadn't been at war in a country since Vietnam. So therefore, like we were essentially learning. And so they also had a lot of cow money that they were throwing out there. Explain what cow money is.
So for us, cow money was cost of war money. And it was like the cost of the war was not just like the other stuff I needed to fight this kind of weird one-off war. Because it wasn't a war plan. Like the military is built on war plans, fighting, you know, pitched battles on battlefields and all tanks and all this other stuff. And like, this was, oh crap, we got to go and like hold a route in Iraq. Crap. Or Afghanistan, I'm like, what? So what did I need for that? And we'd go buy it. And we would buy COTS commercial off-the-shelf stuff. We didn't go through the normal procurement system of the military that takes sometimes a long time. We would be like, what fits and what do I need? And I go buy it, like the sling. Somebody's gonna say, well, that's not the right sling. You're right. You know what? What was the right sling? Because I don't know what it was. I had a single point sling.
Other optics that could have been used was one of them was the Trijicon ACOG with a doctor optic on it. I actually have one of these that I was able to get from a guy who was a former Green Beret that's in like brand new condition. So we'll show you that right now. All right, guys, so this is one of the configurations. So this is an old school Trijicon ACOG 4x32 with the Bible verse on it, which I think is cool, and a doctor optic. Like, check out that doctor optic, man. That was pre-RMR. So let's shoot it for a second, and I'll tell you like a couple of things. Like one, but the doctor optic is bright enough out here that it works really well. I like the heads up. It's funny that in 2023 now, which dating this video is gonna suck, but we're back to the heads up, and they were here in like 2004, 2005. Anyway, let's get some shots on the actual ACOG now. Now, one of the things that I don't like about the ACOG is, and some of you guys probably aren't gonna remember this, but if you look at nowadays shooting, everybody says extend your stock, get a full grip on the gun. That really does make sense, and it's a great way of shooting, but back in the day with the ACOG, and the way that was trained was nose to charging handle. If you watch any of those old Magpul videos or anything like that, nose to charging handle. Well, nose to charging handle on an ACOG, well, absolutely, that's where you have to be for your eye to be able to see fully out of the eye box. If I extend the stock and I'm all the way back here, like I shoot today, I can't see the ACOG at all. I've got to literally come all the way up to get a full sight picture on the ACOG. And what I don't like is that it's on my head like this, and if I'm shooting at an angle, it hits me in the glasses. I do like the doctor optic. I don't mind it. I know the battery life isn't as good, but I do like the doctor optic just as much as I like the RMR and the whole configuration. The only thing I wish is that there was more of an eye box on it. That was the first red dots when they first came on, and then you could have picked an EOTech for this. Now, it wasn't the new EXPS 3 that they are now, but it was the original ones, which I think are 552s, 512s, 512s or 552s, something like that.
All right, guys, so next up, EOTech. So this is an actual from the time period. This was my very first issued EOTech of that time. I did paint this hood. but this takes the AA batteries in here. And so this would have been a configuration you're gonna have. If you notice, I took that rear sight off because when you put it on, it really just clouds your whole view. So this is why those flip-ups were so nice. Even the little arms that we typically ran, or the Wilsons or something like that, because you could flip it up when you needed it and flip it down. And the reason that was kind of important, especially with these EOTechs, was this is the infancy of this kind of holographic technology, what have you. And I remember I would pull up every once in a while and start shooting. In the middle of shooting, the sight would go dead and I'd be trying to find it. And so you always trained yourself to just look for the front sight post. So when you were in this high ready, you saw the front sight, you push it up, click, boom. And if you saw your red dot, great, that's what you're looking for. And if it wasn't there, front sight focus, target, pull the trigger. So again, I don't have the flip up on here, but that was what you really wanted to have, especially with these EOTechs of that time period, because they would go dead, the battery life wasn't that great, and they would sometimes just shut off. So that was where that front sight was key and why it was so nice on this Mod O.
EOTech battery is still horrible, like still only lasts like a month, and it goes on and it turns off after 8 hours, where Aimpoint might last a year or 2 years. Back then they didn't do that. And so if you had a battery that, even now they don't do it if you go outside and it's really cold. So say you're outside and you're out in the winter, or you're in the mountains of Afghanistan, or in the mountains of Tilawaki, whatever, and it's like below zero or at zero, you'll zap the batteries. So having iron sights that are fixed for your backup sights that co-witness with your gun, so that when you throw it up, you can see where red dot or not, you can still shoot your adversary, right? That is one of the most important things, especially of that time, because the dots weren't as reliable as they are now. So also, one of the things that this one's missing for now is they had a PRI charging handle, which this one doesn't have, but I've ordered one for it. I did that because whenever you shoot this thing on fully auto, which I don't do a lot, I did a couple of times for this video, but the blowback is so freaking bad that I'm hoping that will help just a little bit. What's been your experience with those charging handles?
Yeah, so the PRI is the gas buster, and when you're shooting suppressed, it definitely helps. When you're not shooting suppressed, the standard one is just fine. And so the other downside with that PRI is it's kind of longer. So, back then you had your rifle and then you'd be talking or whatever, and you kind of sling your rifle a little bit, and most of us were using single point slings for lots of different reasons. And so you would catch that charging handle on stuff sometimes, and it wouldn't pull the gun completely out of battery, but it would make a weird noise, or it would pull out a little bit more. You just snag on shit. So a lot of us were just like, look, that's what we grew up learning to use. Like when you're learning your manual of arms, you're just using a standard M4. You just swapped it back in. So, oh no, that's not the clone correct. Okay, but operator correct is, I ran that. So, yeah, operator's choice.
All right, so another thing it came with was this Knights Armament NT4 silencer. Yes, it's a silencer, it's not a suppressor. Underneath this I have, that you cannot see, I have a Knights Armament NT4 flash hider. It works pretty good. This can, compared to an RC2, a Surefire RC2, is I can shoot this even on fully auto or shoot it a bunch without earmuffs. I cannot do it with an RC2. You may be different. It's just how my ears work. I cannot tell, the RC2 after 1 or 2 shots really, really hurts my ears. 3 or 4, my ears are ringing. This never made my ears ring at all, but I'm gonna test the accuracy in another video, but I heard they're not as accurate. But what do you think about the NT4?
So I had that. I think it's the only suppressor I actually really ever had that I personally used. A lot of guys had them, used them, and still use them today. I mean, the Marine Corps still uses that suppressor. So, it works really good. Kind of creates a little more blowback than an RC2, but like you said, it's not as loud, because I'm the same way. That RC2 to me is a little, which is the only other SOCOM approved suppressor for this weapon system, is a little bit louder, but it doesn't have the blowback. So it's like this catch-22. I also like the slightly smaller diameter and this and the other thing. So it's something I know. It doesn't wobble. I just like it a little bit more than the RC2.
And currently the Navy's Mark 18s are like 50-50. They still have them.
So
right?
you can still absolutely have this on there of all the different blocks. Doesn't matter, 14, 11, doesn't matter. Like you could have that on there, or you may have a Surefire. Okay. And like I said, the Marine Corps right now, that is what the suppressor they use on a lot of their rifles.
A couple of accessories that I've got for this that make it clone correct for me, and some things I think are really important. One of them is the CQD mounts. Look, guys, if you get this CQD mount for HK clips, don't go to Gunbroker and buy them and pay $150 or $200. You can still get them. I think this one's like 40 and this one's like 30. You can still get them from the company. Just Google them and order them from I just looked, they're in stock. And I looked on Gunbroker and they were like, some of them were 200 and they're like ultra rare. They're not ultra rare. You can get them anytime. This is a thing. So I have a vintage London Bridge sling. It was the Navy VBSS single point sling. I know some of you guys don't remember because some of you guys are kind of young and you're watching, but the single point sling up until probably 2013, 14, 15, pretty much everybody I saw still ran one. It was like that era when it was like Magpul Dynamics, Chris and Trav, that, and then Kyle Lamb started come along and bringing VTAC's 2-point sling. And then the market kind of slowly started to bend toward a 2-point sling. But when's the last time you've seen a 1-point sling?
Oh, I mean, now.
They still have them. That's
I remember 2017 doing VBSS hits and we had single point slings. I had a 2-point sling. It was actually a VTAC, but a lot of the other guys on the team had a single point. And I was like, hey, remember, we were fast roping, you gotta do a second point of retention behind you. And they were like, oh shit. And we had to go get, we made up our clips and we made up our stuff to stick it behind us. But I mean, that was still what they were running because other than for something like that, it still works great.
Yeah, single point sling is great. A 2-point sling is better, but a single point sling is still great. All right, so some of the things that I have that I'm pretty excited about on this is, if you look at a bunch of pictures, so right now we're gonna put in some pictures. This is Operation Red Wings, Matt Axelson, Michael Murphy, Medal of Honor winner, these guys. And if you notice, they all have this laser on here. This is a PEC 5 laser. I actually looked for this for 5 years. Finally, I found one. I paid $547 on eBay for this. And then I looked again, and let's see, I've had this one for 2 years, and then I found one the other day, and I thought, well, if I'm gonna do this clone rifle thing, I really need one more, because it was only this specific period of time that they had these. So I freaking got it, and it was $1,500. It went up $1,000. But so I've got a PEC 2 and a PEC 5. The PEC 2 did flood night vision and a laser IR. So you can only see it at night under night vision. The daytime laser was what the PEC 5 is for. And so they would have it to where they could use the day laser. Now you would see a lot of SEALs back then where they would pull the PEC 2 off and just use the day laser and the flashlight, because the day laser, if you have your nods down, you can still see the day laser. All right. And back then, if you use this flashlight, because it's not so bright, and turned it on even with your night vision, it just literally brightened the room up better for you. You could be seen, but it did brighten the room up better for you. It wasn't like a mod light now where it just blinds everybody and ruins your night vision, right? You would see this in lots of different configurations. Some people wouldn't run the PEC 5. They would just run the PEC 2 on top. Some people wouldn't run the PEC 2. They would just run the PEC 5. Everybody pretty much always had a laser. There was another option. What was your other option?
So I had the Insight, the M6X, which was a red laser with a Surefire, or with a light, and you could slip it on a pistol or a Picatinny. So that was really nice, and it used the same pressure pad and the same button. So you could put that on. You had flip caps just like that, so you can have an IR filter, a red filter, or a blackout filter on the front of it. And that was like my preferred, because it was small, and when I needed a light, I needed a light, and when I didn't need a light, I didn't need a giant, like, leave it on for hours and stuff, you know what I mean? Like, I didn't need more runtime.
Moving on, I've got this old-timey Surefire with the IR cap, and it is the 951, I believe, and it has the little 3 rings right here. I looked for this for years and years and years, and finally I found one, and then I found like 5. It was crazy. But I finally got this flashlight. I'm gonna be honest with you. It reminds me of my like original Surefire X200, where when I pull that thing out today, I'm like, it was almost like not having a light. But back then it was state of the art, and it was, hey, we got light.
Yeah, it's like the old mag lights. You're like, it's better than nothing, you know? And then, okay, well, I got this beater stick that I can
Yeah.
use too. Like,
And we have something to compare it to now. They didn't have anything
Oh,
to
yeah.
compare it to. Okay, last thing here is I've got the Knights Armament broomstick on it. I don't have the correct lower, but I got the Knights Armament broomstick. Remember, we are taught now to extend your stock all the way out and C-grip clamp this. Back then, you can watch Modern Tactical Shooting, Jeff Gerwich, former Green Beret, or you can talk to Mike here, but they tucked in like this to shoot. Now, of course, like before that, they were shooting here, then they were shooting here, and of course, now we know that you swing past targets, that there's a lot of downfalls to shooting like this, but when you're inventing war, you do a lot of different things. So, I mean, shooting has evolved a very long ways. And it's like, let me explain it to you like this. If you watch a golfer or a baseball player, a professional that's swinging a bat or a golf club, and you start with one of the old school guys, Babe Ruth or Ben Hogan, their swing is nothing like a swing of a batter today. All of them old timers, they had all kind of different swings, and however it worked for them, it was great. Today, we have computer systems and technology, and if you watch batters, they almost swing like identical. If you watch golfers, they almost swing identical. Like literally their swings are almost identical because of technology. Well, it's the same thing. Back then, we didn't know a lot about shooting. Shooting really didn't start, we didn't really care about it till like the 70s, 80s with like Jeff Cooper and Clint Smith. And then as it's starting to evolve, then you get guys like Casey Eusebio and Jerry Michalik and Robbie Latham, who have literally been able to tell you mechanically, this is how you stand. Mechanically, this is how you hold the gun. Mechanically, this is how you move your eyes. And what they've done is they've used technology, cameras, whatever, to make it to where there actually is a right way to shoot faster. But in the early 2000s, man, the average SOCOM guy just started shooting based off of what his guys showed him. And then if they found something better, they went on to a better way. And that's how you evolve.
well, and I think the other thing to point out there is talking to a competition shooter to shoot faster is one thing. Like another reason to have a broomstick, obviously to hold the buttons and things like that. But take a government profile barrel and start putting a bunch of rounds through it, and you hold on to it up here, even a brand new Mark 18 Block 1 right now, or URGI for that matter, and buy a couple mags into it, you won't be able to hold the handguard. Or if it's been baking in the sun, you won't hold that handguard because it's metal. So you can hold it down here, and it was just more comfortable to hold because everybody thinks we're going to get in gunfights all day long, every day. And the truth is you were sitting like this all day long, every day. And this is really uncomfortable to sit like it all day, every day. This was easier to hold.
Last thing on the clone side is I see a lot of people when they're talking about this clone gun is right here on the magwell, they have a Navy Crane Mark 18 symbol on there when they think of the Mark 18 Block O. In your career, have you ever seen one of those?
I cannot remember ever seeing either on VBSS teams or NSW teams or any of the SOCOM ones actually having that engravement or that sticker. And I think it just goes to the fact that you're getting uppers and it's still a Mark 18. Like, no, I never saw it, I guess is the short answer. I'm sure it's out there. I can't say it's never happened, but we never saw it.
If you're a cloner and you want to clone this gun and you love Mark 18s, listen, I think this is a great one. You can defend your life on it still today. Everything on this is still practical today. I think you're really going to like this gun. You're not at any disadvantage with this gun, and you still have that old school pound town, I'm a pipe hitter. If you like the way this review went, I've got about 9 more of these old clone guns that I'm working on right now. Tell me if you like it. And if you don't like it, the only way you can tell me is like, subscribe, hit the bell notifications, guys. Got to get me back in that algorithm. For some reason, YouTube is not liking me right now, and it takes you guys to get me back there. So if you're faithful to this channel and you watch it all the time, tag it, share it, keep writing it, and watch it to the end. That's the only thing that keeps me here. All right, guys, thanks for watching the CQBR Mark 18. Outlaw out.